Greetings to the many friends and followers of Steve Lear. My name is Stan, and I'm a friend of Steve. And Steve has asked me to come alongside him and help with the new organization with radio and podcasting, television, and video, as I've had some experience in that arena. And the other day, Steve and I were just in Steve's studio, and we were talking about perhaps an upcoming program on anti-Semitism. And the conversation got going, and then I did one of my little tricks. I just simply said, this could be, let's get this on the record. And so we turned on the camera, and for the next almost 45 minutes, we had a great conversation about that subject. Well, what I'd like to do is right now just go back to that conversation and take out a few of the highlights that came out of our conversation and put them out for your thought and consideration. One of the more interesting questions was I asked Steve, I said, Steve, when was the first time that you kind of realized that maybe the fact that you were Jewish could be a bit of a problem? Here's what he told me.
The moment that it really hit me that there was going to be an issue was Sherry and I were pregnant with our last child, and she was scheduled for a C-section in this upcoming week.
Okay.
And she and I went out on a Saturday night. And we come home, and our 9-year-old daughter is sitting there talking to the babysitter. And we walk in and say, "Hey, what are you guys talking about?" And Kimmy blurts out, "I learned that I was going to go to hell because I didn't believe in Jesus Christ."
Okay, here we go.
Like, whoa. Now, this babysitter was a really good babysitter. So we turned to her, and this is Saturday night, and said, "Listen, you can't do that, but we're having a baby next week, and we could really use your help. You have to come. We'll ask you to come back, but you can't do what you did. And you have until Monday to decide." She called on Monday and said, "I'm really sorry, but I have been put in your lives to lead you to the Jesus Christ way." And we parted ways, and that was fun. Okay. Now, let's go back to Saturday night. So now Sherry and I, the babysitter has left. Sherry and I are looking at each other and go, what do we do?
Yeah.
So the obvious thing is you call the rabbi.
Okay.
So we called the rabbi. He wasn't home. His wife answers the phone, and she turns, and she could tell that Sherry was distressed and upset, and said, "What's going on?" So Sherry tells her the story, and Cindy goes, "This is a rabbinical emergency. Allow me to page the rabbi." Okay.
Yeah.
So the rabbi calls and says, "Put Kimmy on the phone." So Kimmy's talking to him, and he goes, "Kimmy, what I want you to look and visualize is a mountain. And the mountain is, it's a flat mountain. It doesn't go to a peak. It's a flat mountain. So there's lots of space up on top for lots of people. And if you look at a mountain, what you will see is different paths to get to the top of the mountain. Now, God is up there on this mountain, this mysterious power, this entity that, when you don't know the answers, you're going to rely on the faith in a power greater than you to provide some sort of direction and answers. Doesn't provide very clear answers at some time. Oh, sorry, I'm getting on a tangent. Okay, let me come back to the flat mountain.
Right. Okay.
Okay, lots of people with lots of different paths. And Harold goes, what you have to do is Kimmy, you got to think, you just got to get on the mountain. Now, you have picked the Jewish path. Your babysitter has picked a different path. There's all sorts of different paths to the top. And the idea is to get on the mountain. To get on the mountains in a place where you recognize that there is something more powerful than yourself on this in this world. And Kimmy's going like this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that particular experience has had a huge impact on my belief system going forward. That I've kind of come to a conclusion: nobody's wrong.
Okay.
No, nobody's wrong. You're wrong if you don't act morally and generously. That's when you're wrong. And
you were
so
not in the business of throwing anybody else off the mountain, right?
absolutely not.
Okay.
That was my first experience recognizing that I'm probably a little different than a lot of other people.
Well, that was good. I think the rabbi did very well, don't you? Well, then I asked Steve, well, did it ever get to the point where it was not just something like that? It was pretty nasty, maybe even pretty mean, pretty challenging. This is what he told me. Have you ever had a real nasty anti-Semitic incident in your life? I mean, that was a little traumatic for your wife, but where you were just kind of, boom, oh my God, I can't believe these people said that or did that. I mean, a real.
Yeah, that experience happened recently in 2023,
Okay.
where I was speaking at a church, and an individual got up with about 5 minutes left in the discussion, and informed me that what he believed was the challenge that was going on in our world today. And this was before October 7th. That the media is trying to delegitimize Christianity, and the Jews own the media, thus it's the Jews' fault.
Okay, there we go. The
Okay.
Jews,
Now,
those two words, Jews' fault.
Okay.
That's anti-Semitism, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the guy, I went to lunch with him 3 times after that experience. And I liked it. I think he liked me, except for this particular issue. And my wife and I went to dinner with he and his wife, and he did it again. He said the exact same thing straight to my wife. And it was, I couldn't believe it. I was kind of in shock that he would continue that dialogue and that way of thinking. But so that was and he'll claim he's not an anti-Semite. He's just anti anybody accosting Christianity and white people is what he is. Because the guy's brilliant. He's really smart. He's just had some bad experiences in the past and can't let go of it. That's my read of the situation.
Oh my goodness, when I hear stories of things like that, I say, what in the world is going on with people who operate from that point of view in life? I'm a little bit lost. And then I asked Steve, do you have any theories or ideas about how this stuff happens? Well, he had some more words on that.
It's a theory, okay? So there's no proof to it of what's the cause of anti-Semitism. So I wanted to explain that to you and the audience, and then you can kind of push back on this theory.
That's what I wanted to hear from you. I wanted to hear, what do you think the cause of it is, as a Jewish man who's an activist for the community? That's right. I'd like to hear that.
Okay. Judaism was relationship with God 1.0. So it was the first version of a relationship with a higher power. It was the first movement to actually document morality and so forth. And I'm very, very proud of what it did. And that is proven from the standpoint that so many other people have adopted some of those concepts. Okay. Then what happened then? So this was back like 3,300 years ago. So Jesus comes on the scene, and I have a particular belief of Jesus is that he was a rabbi during a particular time in the Jewish world, and what his true goal was is to reform the Jewish world to stop acting just by the rules, but start acting with love and kindness.
Sure. Sure.
So
Yeah.
this is where I think Jesus came in.
Right.
And
I have to remind my friends he was Jewish. That's true.
yeah, I mean, I'm watching a show now called The Chosen, and it's just unbelievable watching and learning because what this program, it's on Netflix, it humanizes.
Oh.
It humanizes Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really quite touching. So Jesus comes along, but it wasn't Jesus so much. It was the followers of Jesus, which decided that there needed to be a new path to God. So whenever you pick a new path to God, you have to kind of crush the old path. And then in addition to that, the Romans were the people who were in charge. So you weren't going to blast the Romans. So you might as well blast your cousins and your family,
Yeah.
right? So then 600 years after this, Mohammed comes into the scene. He comes out of the desert. This is after he's traveled throughout the Middle East, seeing Jews, seeing Christians, and his neck of the woods, which was Mecca, is in disarray. I mean, there's lawlessness going on. And he comes back, goes into the desert, comes out of the desert. He doesn't write and he doesn't read. And he is dictating to scribes what he's sensing. And if you ever look at the Quran, you will see tremendous, what's the word I'm using? Attribution to Jewish characters and Jesus.
That's
It's
right.
like amazing. Okay? So he then, with his followers, decided there needs to be a third path. Well, guess what? It's 1,400 years later. Jews are still here. Christians are still here because I believe the idea was that Jews would convert to Christianity and Christians would convert to Islam. And guess what? We're all still here. So I believe the core of anti-Semitism is that we make people nervous. Jews make people uncomfortable because it might be that their chosen path to God may not be right. And people love to be right. So what occurs is that the animosity to the Jewish people is the fact that it still exists, it's still here, it's only 16 million people, but it's still here. And it shouldn't be. It should not be here. It should have converted into Christianity and it should have converted into Islam, but it's still here.
Okay.
So that's what I believe is the core, is that we make people nervous. And I'm asking those people, can we move on?
Well, thanks, Steve. That's very helpful. And as an old-fashioned history teacher, I love those stories of where things came from. But here we go. Steve then made a point that here might be the question, the real supreme test as to anti-Semitism based on this very important question.
I just, I'm hoping the students who are protesting Israel's behavior today, which this is the new form of anti-Semitism. You could call it anti-Zionism. But let me explain the difference between anti-Semitism and being anti-Zionist.
Okay.
There's a question that everybody needs to answer.
All right.
On this planet, at this time in history, does a Jewish state have the right to exist? Do you want me to repeat that?
It would be good, always good to repeat a good statement 3 times.
Okay. At this time in history, does a Jewish state deserve to exist? Does a Jewish state have a right to exist on this planet at this time? So, where do we go from here?
Wow, that puts it right to us. That's what I call a clarity question. That's where we find out what is what and who people are really doing and what they are doing. So then I, as a longtime business coach, said, okay, Steve, what's next? What should we do now about this? Here's his reply.
I think we need to take some deep breaths back and seriously examine the core. I think there's ambassadors that need to be created where there's people from each culture, each segment. I mean, you need to recognize that Judaism is an incredibly decentralized entity. Okay? There's all sorts of different kinds of Jews. But maybe there needs to be a conference or something of that sort where all these people from different places come together and talk about this anti-Semitism situation. I believe that the Catholic Church in 1965 did one of the great gifts to humanity, where they basically said, we are not going to blame the Jews for the killing of Jesus.
Yes, that was a very important statement of faith.
And what happens is that all these doors opened up. So I go into churches often where my father could have never gone into churches to have discussions.
True. That's
right.
Yeah.
To have discussions about this issue. So the preconceived concepts and thoughts about the other, I think we need to put that away, but we also need to recognize that there's 2 characteristics that are really important to watch.
Okay.
Morality, and generosity.
Okay.
So I've come to the conclusion that this was because of an experience I had, that I deserve the opportunity to experience the wonders of the world, even though there are people who are suffering. I got this from Rabbi Telushkin in a book called Jewish Values.
Okay.
Even though people are suffering. And the reason why is that people will always be suffering. There will always be people suffering because, one, we could get rid of poverty, but there's going to be sickness. And you know what the other thing he said was? Human cruelty.
Mm-hmm.
Human cruelty. So instead of love, we have human cruelty that is affecting our lives. And the rest of the reading that he said is you still have a right and a responsibility to enjoy all the pleasures of the world under these 2 conditions. You behave morally and you behave generously. You think about those who don't have enough. So there's a formula there that I think has been produced that if that formula could be replicated, anti-Semitism will dissipate dramatically. Because anti-Semitism is the canary in the cave that what could happen is our society could move to a immoral platform.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm asking people. Just be moral, critically think about a situation, and be generous. And those two components could move us forward into a much better world where what we're doing is we're behaving in a way of repairing the world, because the world is really broken right now.
Yes, indeed. We are in a deep difficulty. And I've often said that every good story is a rescue story. And hopefully, this has been a little bit of one of those stories. And these are some final thoughts and greetings and thank yous from Steve and myself.
If you're curious about, okay, what could be the direction we go, then type in, say something. And I'm hoping to build a community of curious people that are in search of making the world a better place. And we have to do it through small group conversations.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Stan.
thank you, Steve. We'll be looking forward to another conversation that counts and matters from time to time. I'm Stan Hustad. Thank you, Steve Lear. All the best to all of you who've joined us. Take care and bye for now.